We will now jump to a more critical one with the discussion about artificial intelligence. It's a hot topic, a topic that's discussed also in the art world a lot, but it brings people to very apocalyptic scenarios very often, and we would like to challenge that today with Kim Albrecht, a creative researcher, and Alek Tarkowski, sociologist.
Hello, good morning. Kim, come on stage. I will slowly start introducing our session while we're setting up things. I am very happy to be exactly in this room talking about humans and machines because in the same room, around 25 years ago, I watched Terminator 2 with my face flushed and Guns N' Roses music banging from the same speakers, so this is quite a good place to do this. We have what we will call a fireside chat, I think, with Kim. There is no fire burning here, save maybe for some cold fire of artificial intelligence staring at us from some cameras, who knows. Before we start the talk, we will have a little quiz, which I hope we can put on the screen now, and maybe I will do the quiz first and then introduce you, Kim, okay? Okay, so maybe I will explain how the humans versus machines quiz works. We're at a time where machines are entering, some would say invading a lot of spheres of life, including creativity, and it becomes an interesting question. Can a machine be creative? What can it create? And at some point we'll get a version of the Turing test for creativity, or actually this test is here. And it's a test that asks you if you see a work, is that the work of a human or a machine? We'll use a novel method of taking part in the quiz, which actually I learned from some professors at Harvard, where you don't vote with your hand, but you hum. So if you'll agree with a statement, is this a work made by a human, you will do like this. Okay? This is a very nice method because, a lot of talks were here about audio experiences. This will be a nice audio experience. Let's calibrate our system, okay? Who in this room is a human? Who in this room is a machine? Okay, so it's working. You can hum just a bit louder if you want. That will be still okay. And let's see whether... Okay. So now I need to figure out, so this is the first piece. It's an audio piece. Okay, it reminds me of the Beatles. So, who thinks it's a work of a human? And the machine? Okay. Oh, not here. You were right, as a collective. Okay, let's go to the next one. This one is a piece of art. It reminds me of a graphics I drew in communist times with these little plastic wheels that you could spin around and around. But is this one of those works, or is this a work of a machine? What do you think? Who thinks it's a human work? And machine? It's a bit uncertain, it seems. It's actually both. So in a way you were all right. It's one of these projects that maybe we'll be talking more about where it's actually a combined effort. Now we'll hear a musical piece. Some human voices, but are they singing human music? Let's see. maybe you need a bit more time to make a decision. Exactly. So who's the composer? Is the human composer or a machine? Yeah, it sounds like maybe just a bit more votes for the machinic design of this and creativity. Next one is a lyric that is kind of well known. Hello, space boy, you're sleepy now. Your silhouette is so stationary, you're released, but your custody calls, and I want to be free. Don't you want to be free? So on and so on. Who knows this song? Okay. So is this are the lyrics written by a human? No. Or by a machine? Yes, it is a machine that I think it's heavily inspired, maybe to the point of plagiarism. Hard to say. We won't be talking about copyright today. And this is the last one. There's a human here, but it could be rendered.
I wish I could see beyond what I can see. I wish I could touch beyond what I can touch. I wish I could feel beyond what isn't real. I wish I could imagine, yeah. There's more to who we are.
Okay, you can see more of it on YouTube. So what do you think? Human, composer, or machine? It's again both. It's the music is composed by a machine and the vocals are human. So this is the end of our little quiz. Thank you very much, Anna, for preparing it. There are actually, if you go online and follow this link, there are around 10 more slides. Just remember to play the presentation so that you don't cheat, because the answers are there in the slides. And there are several more interesting cases with footnotes, so you can read about it as well. And so this is the moment where we'll stop the quiz and start our conversation with Kim Albrecht. Kim is a researcher and, excuse me, and an artist who visualizes things and works with visualization. And for a long time he visualized complex systems, worked in a lab led by Professor Laszlo Barabasi, a very famous social scientist, and also, I would say, hard scientist working on visualization and on complex networks.
Physicist. Physicist, I would say.
Physicist, yeah. Sorry. But at some point, sort of, you started looking, and I hope we'll talk a bit more about that, about visualizing other things, like machine intelligence. As you're currently based in Berlin, where you do a PhD at the University of Potsdam, but you're also affiliated with Metal Lab at Harvard, at Harvard University.
Yeah, and the Berkman Klein Center.
So some very interesting interdisciplinary places about which we'll talk as well. But I wanted to start by asking you, so what do you think about the quiz?
Yeah, I found it utterly interesting to divide the space like that, to divide it into, is it made by a human or is it made by a machine? I mean, I would say it's always both. So anything where we use some kind of technology is somehow, I mean, it's always a cooperation. Any kind of music, any kind of play, any kind of artistic outcome is somehow always an intermingling between the human and the machine. Even if somebody plays a flute, one could say that's a technical device. Anything that is in this slideshow presentation went somehow through the Google Slides. So it is definitely always mediated through the machine. At the same time, so I think it's always like human history and the history of culture is always an intermingling between technology and us as humans. I think it's nothing we can divide into a space of it's this or it's that.
But is there anything special happening right now? Because yes, humans are tool using species, right? That's obvious, and culture is mediated. But is there something unique at this moment, or are we just in a lot of hype?
Yeah, so how I think about it is that the last, like, maybe until like 2015, for like 10, 15 years, at the beginning of this millennium, it was very much about big data and data collection, digital data collection, and creating this enormous archives of our cultural heritage, like contemporary cultural heritage, like Twitter, like Facebook, so collecting all these things. And now, since like a few years, this trend is somehow shifting from the collection of data, from the purely creating data centers and filling them with this new kind of material. And what it is about now is about finding new algorithms to argument these things and to make sense of these things. And how I think about it is that what we call machine learning or what we call artificial intelligence is basically a first step of teaching machines to iterate within themselves through data, and through that process somehow teach themselves something within the defined realm that we're giving the machines.
But it's them who are teaching themselves, right, and learning, but the society needs to learn as well, right?
Yeah, they are learning. They are learning themselves, but only within the very set boundaries given to them. And I think what is necessary, the conversations that we need to have and that need to get out of the realm of institutions like Google and Facebook and laboratories of computer scientists and into bigger discussions are these boundaries and how they are defined and how they are set. And I think that's what we need, like more people being involved in that are coming from other disciplines and other fields.
Okay, so maybe this is a good moment to show the first of your works that we want to present and discuss a bit. It's called Artificial Senses, right?
Yes, exactly.
So please say a bit about it. And
Yeah.
we have also some visual reference.
Yeah, let me see. So I've got some other slides here. I'm just gonna skip through them of some other works I've done. You can look at this up online. This is Steve. Here. So the project is called Artificial Senses. It's basically a web piece, so down here, I hope you can see it. You can also visit the link and explore it for yourself. And the idea here is to create something of like an alternative interface to how we normally operate with our smartphones and with our laptops. And my question, or what I was interested in, these machines have all these sensorial inputs. Like we humans, we feel touch and we have senses. The machine has senses too, and I was just interested in this question: what are the senses? How do they operate? What are they in the end? And the way we interact with this sensors in the machine is normally like very utilitarian. So if you think of Google Maps, you have like this small blue dot that is basically grabbing the geolocation of your smartphone. But it's always presented in a way that is very humanized. So the interfaces that we know, they're made for us to operate in very specific settings and very specific forms. So these things are always designed in a way that they're human, but they never really reveal how the machine, what's the input to the machine. So what I did here, I looked at the 6 most common sensors that you find in your smartphone and in this laptop, and try to create interfaces that visualize this kind of sensors in ways that are rather foreign to us as humans, but very close to the way the machine is perceiving the kind of input. So here we have like a touching sensor, then seeing, that is the camera, then the location sensor, that's X and Y coordinates on planet Earth, an orientation sensor, the hearing, which is like the audio signal that goes in, and a movement sensor. And I just like try to create interfaces that are further away from how we normally interact with this kind of things.
So this is one of the examples where you take the whole sort of traditional methodology of visualization, right, with its certain visual forms, but also certain ways of presenting knowledge, and apply it to this area. So you do that with what expectation? What do you think this is? Is this a tool of making us aware? Is this a pragmatic tool that lets us do something? Because these, by the way, are live, right?
Yeah,
when you go on the site,
live.
you can
Yeah.
play around with seeing how the sensors collect data. But so what's the purpose?
So first of all, I think of these things as experiments. So I'm doing this experimentation, and I'm trying to explore it to see how the systems behave and what they're actually doing. And afterwards, I'm trying to reflect on what that means. In this case, this is a location sensor, so you get like a latitude and a longitude input, and like I'm overlaying this, and then you get this image. I think there's a video, and I can just so this is how this looks like over time. And something that I found, for example, in this image so utterly interesting, is that even if my computer is like located in the same position, each of this lines is one slice in time, and even if the machine is not moving at all, there's some randomness within the signal, and that's why these images actually change. Like this would not change, because like the position is just it's not changing. So there's some variations. I mean, the signal goes to like a triangulation of satellites and then comes back and gives me a position. And each time the machine is requesting this signal, there's a little slight variation and slight change. So we could talk about that the machine is somehow guessing, and we don't think of these systems as something that is guessing, because like everything they do is so hard, and it's values, and it's like, but in the end the machine is not really sure where it is. It's like always giving me back like a slightly different and alternative. So these are kind of the things that come out of this experimentation that is basically driven by curiosity.
So basically you're creating an interface, an alternative interface that allows you as a researcher, I guess, to spot some specificities of this machine learning or machine experiencing, right?
Yeah.
But it makes me also think, how with regard to contemporary music, experimental contemporary music, really to experience it well, you need the background, highly theoretical in the end, or a good experience, right? Prior experience, someone who would explain how to listen to it. It feels the same here, right? In a way, my feeling with the visualization is often people treat it as eye candy, right? I think it looks good on Facebook. It collects a lot of clicks. You throw in the visualization, I think people just go, wow, this is visualized, right? Because visualization is, I hope, still cool. But don't you feel like in the end, it's asking the viewer to have some technical background, that it's not giving a new view on big data. It says you still need in today's society to have the expertise.
Sure. I mean, I would say that's true about any kind of contemporary art, most probably, that you need to you need to have a little bit, at least, of the backstory to understand what's actually going on, and that it's not just a pretty picture, but that there's something behind it, and that there's something that's interesting about it. I mean, it's not a problem we're going to solve here right now. But like, I think it's something we are also in the lab at MetaLab very much aware of, and we're discussing this quite a lot, and thinking about how can we communicate this in a way that actually people understand what's going on, and be giving them something that explains it to them in very quick and easy ways that are not too technical, but also don't eliminate all the complexities at hand.
So maybe we can now look at the other work. This one was about demonstrating what a machine senses, to simplify things, right? But you also try to understand how, again, in simple terms, machines think in a way, right? So maybe we can look at the next project where you discover some quirks. Or do you prefer the theater piece first?
Yeah, I think the theater piece, because like the theater piece was highly related to this. So the theater piece came out of this work. So after I finished this project, so here are just some like images of how this was presented in art galleries. And I had this hanging tablets, what I found kind of funny, that were live sensing the space. And from that, a theater director in Berlin came to me. He saw me talking about this piece, and he asked me if I would like to join a theater play based on the sensors. And what we basically did is we made a show which was about 2 hours long, and about half the people in the audience got a glove and joined the glove club. And they were tracked. So we tracked the heartbeat and the skin response, and we did live visualizations of that data. And I found it utterly interesting because people had the sensors in their hand, and it was them being displayed in an alternative way throughout the show, and the entire story of the play was then about the people who joined this glove club. So here are just some images of how this looked like. So you had these people with this gloves, and I think it was like, when you think normally about visualizations or this data, it's like extremely detached from the actual people who are looking at it. So even me, as somebody who's visualizing data, like often I don't really know how it was collected, where it comes from, what kind of assumptions were placed on this. But in the play, the data was collected live and from the people within the audience, and then the entire play went around that. So I think that's an interesting part here.
So the hairs on your head
are numbered. It's a Bible text.
Okay, I thought it's like a text from a totalitarian future dystopia that you're born as a child, in a second the artificial intelligence in the hospital counts your hairs, and that's only the beginning, and then your life continues. I'm joking a bit, of course. I don't think that was the theme of your play, but I think that's a popular narrative when you start thinking, okay, data collection, they know what's my heart rate, they know the skin tension, they know my emotions. At some point you'll collect EEG caps, and it'll get maybe something akin to thoughts. Are you entering that territory with works like this? Is it about dystopias and showing problems with big data, or you don't want to go in that direction?
No, I think it's totally about that. I mean, the entire play is kind of sarcastic and very positive, and it's like all the time, it's like, hey, we're so awesome, we're now like creating this data sets, and we can track ourselves, and maybe just to like, it's not spoiling the play, so I think it's fine. But in the end, like the last scene in the play is that the data gets uploaded to the biggest insurance company, and we as the participants thank the audience for creating this new data set which will advance the technology.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, I think it's utterly critical about what's happening there, but at the same time also interested. I mean, like, it's fascinating. When we first got these gloves and we were trying them out, we were at least sitting there, just like the entire crew of like 10, 15 people, having all the gloves on and looking at ourselves in this. I mean, there's something fascinating about it, but at the same time, we should be aware what this is doing to us.
But do you also get this feeling when I sometimes get in touch with a piece of tech that feels like really new? Like, okay, and everyone has their own point. What's new for me, for instance, getting one of these really contemporary versions of VR with some 3D painting apps, it really, you get this like shock in your body. Do you get that? Like a feeling of sublime? You know, that you're really getting in touch with something that has some huge potential. I imagine if I had this glove on my hand, I could have a sense really, you know, remember that moment.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's that's a fascinating interplay, that there's something about it that like captures us so much, and that is so interesting to us, and that, I mean, there is something captivating about this new technologies and about all these new things that are coming out. And I mean, I totally understand that, but at the same time, we also should be aware of what's actually happening behind the scenes. And I think here the systems are just so obscure. Like, if I type something into my phone, I don't really know who's getting that, what's happening behind. So we only have these surfaces, and we are not aware of what's happening behind that. There's a media or a videographer artist called Harun Farokhi, and he talks about operational images. So that this are like all our interfaces are like images that we have to operate to do something. So you open your maps application to go from one point to another, and it's a very new way to interact with images. We never had that before. Images were something that we looked at for aesthetic reasons or for other reasons. Who ever opened Google Maps for aesthetic reasons? Nobody. We open the systems to operate within them and to do something with them. And I'm interested in reversing this process and not having like images that we operate upon, but images of operation. So images that show us to some extent how these machines operate.
And that's what I like about your visualizations, that I think they let us in a way step back, right? Step back from being in the thick of things, from the urgent emotions we might have, but also from confusion about what's going on. And as we said, if you have some, of course, understanding of what's going on, it lets you, right, like get a sense where you are. Yeah. But in practical terms, so you would like your mobile phone to have this additional screen where it would be all about graphs and like a log of what's being collected. Would that help?
I mean...
Because, sorry, we're going in that direction. We talked about before this session that, for instance, it's now popular for smartphone producers to give you some sense of control through these, like, what are they called? The time tracking.
Yeah, time track, like
Google
the new...
calls it well-being.
Yeah. I think Apple too, like, yeah, they have this now. I think it's a good restriction, but this is still not... this is still not showing us like how the systems operate in any way. And I think like behind the scenes they just operate so differently than what we expect them to. And there's so much else going on that we are like totally obscured. And I think for an operational standpoint, if a doctor needs to make a decision or if you're just trying to get from A to B, this is totally fine. But we should also have this additional layer where we actually get aware of what's happening and how these things behave, and that this behavior is totally different than how we operate. This kind of interface is always made in very human ways and are made in ways that feel natural to us, but they're not.
Yeah, so this is what I like about the next work, if we can show it, because it examines how this machine intelligence, if you want to call that, is in a way alien. But it doesn't do it through any images of like a robot staring with you at you. And so if you can talk a bit about how you explore that in more subtle ways.
Yeah. So the question, like, I mean, it arrived out of the previous projects that I showed you, and what I was still maybe unhappy about, that I'm still creating interfaces. So I still like I'm creating alternative interfaces, as I call them, but still like I'm making this visuals. So in artificial senses, like this graphics that you showed were still decisions by myself how these things should function. And I wanted to go beyond that and create images that are basically rather created by the machine through some kind of instructions that I'm giving. And what I was interested in is creating a scenario which is mathematically and algorithmically perfectly computable, and the computer should not have a problem doing it. But at some point within the interface creates a problem, and which is basically not solvable for the machine, or which needs to create a situation in which the machine needs to make a decision by itself. This sounds utterly abstract, but what I came up with is a very simple system. And what I have is a three-dimensional space. I think, yeah. So this is my three-dimensional space, just a black space, and I'm drawing a white rectangle within that space. And then I'm telling the machine to draw another rectangle at the same position within the space. But this time, don't draw me a white rectangle, but a black rectangle. And what this creates is a situation where the machine needs to decide what to show and what to hide. Because, like, on the one side, there's a distinction between the two different colors that I'm asking the machine to draw, but at the same time, they're at the same position. And this creates a situation, mathematically, algorithmically, this is no problem, but on the level of the interface, where the machine needs to draw these things and show it to us, it creates a problem of what the machine should show. And we as humans, we would basically be ambiguous about it. If I would ask you to place two pieces of paper in the same position, you would just make a decision which one is on top of the other. The machine is not really doing that, but it creates like some kind of merger that looks like this. In computer science, this is known as z-fighting. It's an error, it's seen as an error. I don't really see it as an error, but rather as something that reveals how the systems operate and how they behave, and how this is totally different than how we would behave. There's no ambiguity, there's no vagueness within how this system basically handles my request. And I can play this, and it's gonna add, it might add some more rectangles. So now it's drawing 100 rectangles onto the scene, and each time it adds another layer onto the same position. It like creates this kind of pattern, which I feel is an aesthetic that is somehow created between me and the machine.
I got a bit looped by it. I must feel it sounds like you're, Zen koans. You're designing Zen koans for machines. So why are you so interested? Do you want to prove machines make errors? What fascinates you in these? They're not even glitches, as you say, some weird moments in all this. I'm interested in this because I think, again, the narrative we like to talk about machines is, I think most silly one, that they're perfect, right? They will make good choices, and I don't know, maybe the budget of Poland will be better if we attach some artificial intelligence to it that will program everything, right? But okay, even if you don't do that, you're rather saying in terms of biases, right? It's not an error, it's like a bias because it was programmed and somewhere along the line some bias occurred, like the famous Microsoft chatbot Ty that got suddenly a fascist bias.
Yeah.
But this is different, right?
Yeah, so I think what I'm interested in, or what I wanted to show, is that the systems operate utterly different than we behave in our world. That they are not like function as we function. And even if this is on a very abstract level and it's like an art piece, I think it's this like happens on the lowest level of computation, where it's basically binary code of ones and zeros, up to the up to systems that we use every day. My favorite example is, I'm sitting here, I don't know how you exactly feel. I don't know how I feel. Am I frightened? Am I happy to be here? Like, I wouldn't be able to put that into like a numerical value, like at no point basically. But on Facebook, you have exactly 7 emotions. You can decide between love, haha, wow, crying. So, and it's a totally strange space, and that's because the systems are basically they always need to distinct the space. They always need to be distinction machines. And even if this gets more faceted than like 7 different emotions, these systems always operate in that way, and they're not really able to operate in any other way. And I think it's always a binary thing that's happening within the systems, and that hugely influence us if so much of our communication goes through the systems.
But do you think that's a reduction? I know that in probably circles you operate in around Harvard and MIT. There's, for instance, a text by Joe Ito on resisting reduction, and I think that's exactly it. We don't want to be reduced to 2 choices, or 7 of them reduced to being, not controlled, but even sort of the machine exerts such a powerful force. We want the situation where chess is played by human and machine teams. Is your thinking similar?
I mean, I think we are right now in a time, nobody is like talking about cybernetics anymore, but we're basically, over the last 20 years, created a world in which cybernetics is everywhere, and we all think about it as quantified systems that we can analyze and make better. And as you said, it might be better if some countries are ruled by an AI, but this AI would always operate based on this binary decisions that it's set up for, and the things that are not binary, I think, are the things that interest me, the things that we cannot place within the one or the other, the things that we have ambiguity about, the things that are not clear, the things that are not stable. And I think on many levels in biology, in physics, we know that our world is not based on a binary system. So I think we should not leave all our systems to this kind of thinking.
So for the last part of our conversation, if you can leave some nice
I just
abstract graphic there, that would be great. I wanted to ask you about the institutions you work with, because I deeply believe that new times need, maybe not new institutions, we're not going to burn libraries, burn museums, but they need to adapt. I like to think that they need to be hybrid of something old, very good roots, European traditions of public institutions is amazing, but there needs to be something new added, and it feels like you work with such institutions. Can you say a bit more about them, like the Meta Lab?
Yeah, I think the Meta Lab is a fantastic space. My colleague Sarah Newman is going to talk in the next session, so you will hear a bit more about it. What I think is so important, as we have so many, I think technology nowadays is very much captured by capitalistic structures, we have to say. So the system's set up to make money and to generate profit. And I'm not totally against that, but I think we shouldn't leave it up to this kind of systems to a full extent. And it's just great to have institutions that basically allow for approaching this kind of systems more critically and not only operating within it to make a profit, but to reflect on it and to understand what it means for society and how this is influencing us. And I think MetaLab is a place that allows for that, and most probably the setting of the Berkman Center, and same the University of Potsdam, where I do my PhD in media theory. All these places allow for these pockets of critical reflections of what it means to become a data-fied society and to be so surrounded and embedded within these digital systems.
So, what would be the recommendation for a cultural institution? Like, I don't know, we have here the Adam Mickiewicz Institute or a Polish Film Institute, right? Or a large library. What should they do to adapt to the times they're in and the culture they're in and still play their role?
Yeah, I think we should not fully embrace the digitalization and see it as something that is simply positive and there to make our lives faster and better and quicker, but also this institution should be there to be places of reflection and places to reconsider what it means to be human in the 21st century and what it actually is that we're doing here.
Okay, good. I have one last question. We're almost done.
Yeah.
We started with the theme human versus machines. I wanted to ask you, do you like that word versus, or I can give you a chance to replace it with another word? Do you leave it there, like in a good TV show? Or do you change it to something else, Kim?
I would change it, definitely. I think it's always a between. It's always a mixture. It's always some, and maybe I would change it to intermingling or something. So I think it's always we create the systems, and the systems reflect ourselves. So I think it's like a totally intermingled and not a versus. It's not an either or.
Humans intermingling with machines. What a great choice. Thank you, Kim. You won. Thank you, everyone.